Hey, what up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. It's your boy Kenny bringing you a spoiler-free review this time. We talking about none other than Thor: Love and Thunder. Just hit theaters this past weekend as of the time of this recording, and a lot of anticipation going into this one for Phase 4. And giving you all a little bit of background on myself as an MCU fan or a Thor fan if this is your first time visiting the channel. And we love the MCU around here. I love the MCU. I've been watching it ever since Iron Man dropped in 2008 with my dad, Father's Day weekend, and have caught every single one of them in theaters ever since, up until today. And for those of you that haven't visited the channel before this point, we do a ton of MCU content around here. So make sure you click the subscribe button down below so you don't miss a single dose of that fandom dopeness in your feed every single week, all the time, baby. And click that bell so you get alerted as well. All the algorithms and all that stuff, man. We're trying to beat these robots out here. We got to get with it. You know what I'm saying? But let's get right into this thing. Thor: Love and Thunder had a lot of hype going into this. This was one of my most anticipated flicks coming out this year. And I got to say, overall, I'm pretty damn satisfied, man. I am pretty satisfied with this one. And I will say I'm a huge fan of Thor Ragnarok, and I'm a big fan of Taika Waititi as a filmmaker, director, actor, however you want to look at it. I'm a big fan of that guy as well. And I wasn't loving the first two Thor films going into Ragnarok, and that totally saved the Thor franchise for me, as it did a lot of other fans like you guys out there. And I gotta say, this one does continue that trend and does continue Thor on the path of a lot of great humor, a lot of great action, and all that good jazz. But I gotta say, if I'm being honest, this one didn't quite live up to my expectations very slightly. Not too much, though. But overall, it was a little bit of a step down from the last one. But going into some of the positive, spoiler-free aspects before we get into some of the mix and the negative stuff, I gotta say, Thor himself as a character, thoroughly enjoyable in this, man. And I do think there was some kind of Shakespearean, more kind of classic, serious Thor moments sprinkled in there in great measure that was kind of nice to see. And I will say, when it comes to the comedic side of the character, A1, that hasn't changed a bit. Chris Hemsworth just knows how to play Thor and how to play that character, especially in the world that Taika Waititi likes to create in his films. And that trend continues here. Thor is so fun, so charismatic, and a lot of great action scenes with him, as well as you come to expect from Thor at this point here in Phase 4. And this fourth Thor film, man, love that with Chris Hemsworth. I don't know how this guy continuously gets more jacked and more jacked as time goes on. He literally looks like a fucking superhero. It's insane, and I got to tell you, I got to get trained by that guy. I'll be looking like the Black Thor, man. Boastful Loki, boastful Thor right here. So going into that, man, and for the most part, the characters were pretty well done. I got to say, a big improvement in this one, something y'all probably wouldn't have expected me to say, for those of you that know me more personally and know my taste in the MCU and what characters I like and dislike. Wasn't necessarily a huge fan of Jane as a character overall in the series. I did like her in the series of Thor's films, okay, but she didn't have a lot of chemistry with Chris Hemsworth as Thor before in the previous, or the first two Thor films anyway, and I just thought there wasn't really much for them to do at this point. Well, when they announced at Comic-Con back in 2019, I believe, 2018, something like that, that Natalie Portman was coming back to reprise her role as Jane Foster, coming in for Thor: Love and Thunder, I was a little hesitant. I knew they were going to go with the Mighty Thor storyline from the comics, and while I have not read that storyline, I do know a couple facts about it, but not too much, so I was able to go into this one with fresh eyes, and I gotta say, I enjoyed her for the most part in this film, man. She was actually pretty funny when she needed to be for the most part. Her chemistry with Chris Hemsworth has improved tenfold, and her action in more Mighty Thor moments, without giving too much away, are very cool as well. And I love a couple. There's one bit that she has going back and forth with Thor as they're kind of reconnecting in this thing in certain ways and whatnot. And as they're kind of getting closer together again after being apart for all this time, it's really fun to see this particular bit and this banter go back and forth between the two. And I really enjoyed her overall in this film. Valkyrie is back in this thing as King of Asgard, of course, and she's kind of over her role as the leader of Asgard because of all the tourism and all the responsibilities. She misses being out there in the action, fighting bad guys, kicking ass and taking names, and taking a few drinks while she's at it. But she's back in action here with Thor, and I gotta say, although I do think she is a little underutilized in this film, every second we get with Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie in this film is, bar none, really great stuff, and I really enjoyed her performance overall. Some really funny moments as well, and really can't wait to see her in the next one and see where they take her character from here. And let's see, who else we got to talk about here? Oh, how could I forget about the villain, Gore the God Butcher, played by none other than Christian Bale, man, back in the comic book universe, doing his thing here as the main villain of this film. And I gotta say, pretty fucking well done. I really loved his performance overall as Gore. Really liked the storyline that they had going for him, and the whole reason and motivation he had for what he's doing and for wanting to take out the gods is very well done. And I love the way that everything comes full circle by the end of the film. And he does have somewhat of an arc in this thing, and I do appreciate that. And every second Christian Bale has on screen as this character is so damn awesome. And like I said, he always disappears into the role. Christian Bale always delivers in the acting department, no matter how good or bad the film is that he is in. He is spectacular, and that continues here with Love and Thunder. Really enjoyed his performance overall. And Taika Waititi is back as Korg. A lot of fun to be had there. Some really funny bits with that we'll be able to get into in the spoiler review, but some really fun stuff there. And overall, the action was really well done, and there was some really creative visuals that Taika Waititi was playing with in this one and implementing in certain sequences to indicate where they are and things like that. And that was really awesome and well done. And I really like the action in this and getting to see all the different things with Mighty Thor and, our regular version of Thor and Valkyrie getting in the mix. And, you get to see some new weapons like Gore's Necromancer sword and some other cool stuff that's going to be thrown in there that you guys will probably enjoy. And yeah, a lot of fun to be had there. And overall, this film is very entertaining. It is very funny. You know what I'm saying? I laughed at like at least good 75-80% of the jokes. Not all of them land, but the ones that do definitely had me busting up. And there's some really, really funny ones I can't wait to talk about in the spoiler-filled review/discussion of this thing. But really funny stuff going on here. Doesn't disappoint in the comedy department. But getting into some of those mixed elements of the flick, I will say the comedy is a little overbearing at times and does kind of kill the tension and some of the drama of certain serious moments. Just a few, not a whole lot throughout the entire film, at least for me. But there were a few key moments where I did think the humor was taken away from it. Similar to Ragnarok, but I think this was a little more egregious in this one. Not too much to the point where I wasn't enjoying or having a good time with the film. But overall, it just wasn't quite getting there. Sometimes with the humor, it was kind of getting in the way of some of those more serious moments. But not too much to really detract a large amount of the drama from the film, because there are a few storylines that really do ring true, but it does kind of get in the way in a few moments. And I do think a couple characters do get shortchanged in a certain way and could have had a little more time to flesh them out on screen. I won't get into who those characters are because I don't want to spoil or give any indications away for anything, but there are a couple characters that I think could have had a little more boost in this thing and could have had a little more to do. I know there's like a ton of footage that they ended up cutting out and ended up on the cutting room floor, but I would love to see that extended version just to see if some of this stuff that's kind of missing from the film, at least from my perspective, is back in there. And I do think that there was one other thing I was going to say. There are some conveniences when it comes to the plot and certain abilities and things that are setups for certain character arcs and things like that. I do think they do take a couple shortcuts and they do cheat a little bit to get certain things to go through or to go down in this movie the way they want them to. And I do think that does take away from it just a little bit and does kind of bug me as a fan that does know a lot of the lore and has watched all these films up until this point. There's certain things that go down where you're like, why didn't they do that before in another movie? Or why couldn't they do that before? Or how in the hell is that happening? You know, you got to kind of shrug and let it go a little bit, but it did kind of bug me, so I definitely wanted to bring that up here. And that's really it for like the negatives and mixed things for me in this movie. I really did enjoy it quite a bit. It's a very fun movie, another cool installment in the MCU where you definitely get the director's vision and his style is definitely here with Taika Waititi. The MCU does not bury that or get in the way of that, and that is a plus in my book, similar to Multiverse of Madness, Doctor Strange 2, that came out earlier this year with Sam Raimi. I do feel like the director's vision coming forward was a good thing here for the most part. But overall, this is a very enjoyable installment in the MCU. Another fun for Thor flick. And Thor 4 definitely does not disappoint, at least for me. For the most part, it's definitely a recommendation in my book. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. It's really, really good, but not quite great like I was expecting. So very slightly disappointing, but overall, I had a good time with it. It's a fun flick. I can't wait to watch it again. It is really good, but just thought they could have elevated it back to that Ragnarok level, if not better. I do think the humor with the dramatic elements and the MCU tie-ins was a little more well-balanced in that one as well. So a couple of those things kind of drag it back. I was going to go with a 7.75, but since I did enjoy myself quite a bit and I do want to watch it again and can't wait to do so, I'm going to bump it up just slightly to an 8 out of 10. But what say you guys out there? I would love to hear all you guys, girls, and everyone in between. I would love to hear all your opinions out there, all my fellow MCU fans. It would be so fun to get into a discussion with you guys out there. But thank you so much for checking out this spoiler-free review and for just sticking around and checking out our content in general. And we hope you click subscribe, the likes, the downloads on the podcast feed, all of that. Follow our podcast feeds all over the place. And make sure you stay tuned and you don't sleep. We'll see you guys real soon. Peace.